Go into your working folder and open up compoundpath.ai. Now in this chapter, we have looked at clipping masks, what I call the now you see it, now you don't philosophy of working with images within shapes. The state of Kansas, the state of insanity, the piggy bank, whatever it is, it looks like it's cut out with scissors. I love them. I use them all the time. Then we stood that on its head by going to opacity masks. In an opacity mask, we learned that you could use shades of gray to create softness in your mask, and that's kind of cool too. Let's revisit clipping masks and stand them back on their head, and I don't even know if I'm using that term correctly, by, in this project, creating a much more complicated clipping mask. So let's start out. We've got the Kansas wheat field. Up here in a layer, in mask, I've got all these pretty little yellow rectangles. Okay, what I want it to do is clip through all of them. So I'm looking at that Kansas wheat field kind of through a window that's got little tiny window panes in it, whatever. I'm going to come over here. We got everything the way it's supposed to be. Mask is on top, images in the bottom. Let's go ahead and select everything. Go to the word object on the pull-down menu and go down to clipping mask and select make, but it won't work. Why? Well, there are really two things that you have to do with a clipping mask. One, we know. It has to be vector. Number two, it can only be one item. You can't have a lot of items. It will go to the topmost one in the stack, which apparently was that one, ignore everything in between, and go to the bottom to use for the clip, and I've got a little piece of some mowed wheat. It's not what I want, so I'm going to press undo, love undo. Well, you know what? I know the problem. I didn't group those things. They're individuals. Had to group them. So let's do this. Everything is selected. So if I turn off, not turn off, but lock image, that means it's not selected anymore. So all I have is these. Go up the word object and go down to group. Okay, now they're one big piece in a sense. Now let's unlock image and select everything. Go to the word object, go down to clipping mask. That's even worse. Even though a group functions as one item, they are still considered by Adobe Illustrator separate items. Let me press undo. What do we need to do? I need to figure out a way to make all of those yellow rectangles, at least in the eyes of Adobe Illustrator, one single item, even though they're separated by space. Now they are grouped, so I can select them. Let me show you something before we actually do that. If I come over here and select them and go to, say, my gradient right here, well, each one gets the gradient because they are individual items. Now let me go back to a color. Now this is what we need to do. They can be grouped or not, just have them selected. Go up to the word object, go down below mask, and go to compound path make. Now it doesn't look any different, but watch the difference when I apply the gradient. That's one object. It gets one gradient. So let's turn everything on, make sure everything's unlocked. Let's take that back to a color. Doesn't really matter, but we will. Okay, so let's select both items. Now we only have two items, really, this and that. Go up to the word object, go down to clipping mask, make, and there you go. It actually worked. The one limitation, actually two, but the one that we were working with is you've got to use one item. How do I make multiple items that are separated by space one item? Compound path. Now there are other areas in Adobe Illustrator where you have to work with one item against another. And 9 times out of 10, if that's what you need to do and you want to do a complex thing like this, remember compound path. It will work.